Springs Police Department, talking about responding to the high school that day. Philip, your thoughts on his testimony? Obviously, we heard from the survivors earlier in the week, and now we are hearing from the police officers who responded to the scene that day.
No, this is a factual recitation of his observations at the scene. And again, it goes to the aggravators. One of the aggravators in Florida is that the defendant committed murder by way of aggravated child abuse. And here you have an officer happening upon a school, finding a dead student on the ground. So right there, they've met one of their aggravators. So again, it's just relevant as to proving up the aggravators. Now, as a practical matter, it's emotionally upsetting to the gallery, obviously to the family, the next of kin to the young student that was found deceased at the school. He checked the vitals, confirmed he was dead. Again, that goes to the aggravators. I just don't think there's any way to whitewash or sugarcoat or otherwise, smooth over some of this very aggravating evidence, and it just needs to be presented to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
There's something I found interesting when I was listening to this earlier in the week, sitting in the courtroom, and a number of the students who were shot, Mark, were in a Holocaust history class, or history of the Holocaust is what they called it, when they were shot through the window in the door by Nicholas Cruz. And we had heard some testimony, or we had heard, in pretrial hearings that Nicholas Cruz had swastikas on his gun. Do you think, I know Nicholas Cruz hadn't been a student there in a while, but is this a coincidence, or do you think that the prosecutors, they can't maybe come out right out and say it, but do you think that he opened fire on that class because it was a history of the Holocaust, class? I don't know how he would know that, but what are your thoughts on that?
It would be hard to prove if they had some way of knowing that the shooter had access to the class schedule and what room. There's a lot of classes, a lot of different schedules, but the fact that he would have a swastika tells the jury something about him. Earlier last hour, we heard some lawyers talking about evidence being prejudicial. It's a misunderstanding that some people think evidence is not allowed to be prejudicial. It actually is supposed to be prejudicial. It's only when it's more prejudicial than probative is it not allowed. And in this case, we're seeing lots of evidence that feels prejudicial, but it goes to one of these aggravating factors. And because every juror has to be convinced unanimously, these prosecutors, they feel that burden. Imagine winning every juror but one on every issue but one, and then still losing on the death penalty.